All right, folks, welcome back to the story of Esther. Today, the plot moves on. We have new characters, and one problem gets resolved while other problems get created.
Mhm.
So, let's just dive right in with chapter 2, verse 1, and we see that the king who has previously banished his queen because she didn't do what he said remembers her. And evidently that memory has stirred up some emotions. We don't know what emotions, it doesn't say. And so the next plan gets kicked into action of like, well, I guess we need to replace the queen.
Right. Mhm.
So any thoughts on what the king is feeling at this point when he remembers? We're left to fill in the blanks on this one.
Well, he's lonely at night.
Yes.
Mhm.
That seems to be the universal solution. When the king's in trouble, you go out looking for a bunch of virgins.
Right. Right.
Mhm. Now, I will say we are in the part of the Bible where the word virgin implies young maiden. It is not necessarily a status of her sexuality. I think it's this one likely the king could have his preference on that one, so there is probably a little bit of an undertone, but
Mhm, mhm.
it is not the term how we use the term today. It is he went out looking for cute teenage girls. We are going
Yeah.
to ignore the fact that there is a big age gap, which is pretty much guaranteed in
Mhm,
this action. But this is more of a sign of like age and stage in life kind of a thing.
mhm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Well, and the candidates are just are joining one of many. There's a whole harem full.
Mhm.
Right. So that brings us to the next thing. So the advisors have the idea, let's just gather a bunch of beautiful young ladies together. We're going to give them beautiful treatments and keep them in the harem. Now, I want to know what you all imagine. What comes to mind when the term harem is used? Yeah, Gretchen?
I just read a book by Lisa C. about harems in China. And maybe Jennifer, you've read this book. And it was kind of a whole view of life. I mean, for in China, the women really were not allowed to go hardly out into the garden. I mean, that would be a big, and never out. And the kinds of relationships and how they managed being around each other day after day was sort of insightful. Jennifer, you might want to say more about that. I don't know. I guess I thought it's like joining a sisterhood.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I think you said it well, Gretchen. I mean, all of these people thrown together and they're so restricted. So it's difficult, I would think.
Hmm.
As
Well,
I,
and what's happening here is that the king's going to make a choice. So you're competing with all these
Mhm, mhm.
women who are there with you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I was what I recall is how it has been depicted in movies. It always looked like a spa populated by a lot of pretty young girls in scantily clad costumes. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. So a lot of the artwork, especially in the early 1900s or in the 1800s, the what the depictions of harems are entirely fabricated. When you're thinking about Arabian Nights,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
A Thousand Nights or 100 Nights with the King, all of those things, Western imagination. What happened was Europeans went into Islamic areas and they were told, you can't go into the harems. And so Western men imagined what could possibly be in these spaces that men are not allowed except for a few special ones. And it became ultra sexualized because, of course, if you're not allowed in, this must be like a sexual paradise for the men in control.
Hmm.
So I bring that up. I'm glad we have a book reference that says something else, which is really good. But Larry, I'm guessing the scantily clad spas are kind of that Arabian Nights imagination.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What actual research has found, or so first of all, the translation here, harem literally translates to a house of women.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is more like a sorority house. Now, granted, what you said initially was true, is they are restricted in their movement. They don't have a choice in the matter. Like, if you're a beautiful woman and you got scooped up, congratulations, you have been forced to join a sorority. And
Mhm.
there is a bit of competition here.
Mhm.
However, if you were to choose between living life as the daughter of a merchant, being prepared to be married to probably someone else for a merchant. You're going to be responsible for cleaning the house, cooking the dinner, helping run the shop, raise the kids. Or you get to live a life in a spa where you occasionally attend to the king. What do you all think most women would choose?
Yeah.
So
If
this
you're
is
smart.
Pampered. Yes, right.
So here is this is kind of the trade-off. You do lose some of your freedom, but women didn't necessarily have a lot of freedom to begin with in this culture. It is still a very patriarchal culture. Women are still property. And so the question is, do you want to be owned by some Joe Blow, or do you want to be owned by the
By the
king?
king, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is that this is a protected space, which means that like you are guarded, you have attendants, you have maids, where in the normal life you're guarded by like your husband. If you have a good husband, there's a chance you have a very bad husband, but otherwise you live in a protected female space without the intrusion of men. This is actually a really good deal. Is maybe not everyone's cup of tea. I know not everyone wants to be pampered, but for ancient women, if you got picked up, this is a life of luxury that not many would know.
Mhm.
So does that change a little bit of how we
Mhm.
understand what a harem is?
Hmm.
All right. Because it's also a space where, like, granted, they are being watched over by eunuchs. They don't get a lot of control over where they go outside the House of Women, but inside, women actually are dominant, which is also unique. Is it kind of like when you think of why some women really liked being in a nunnery, it's because nuns got to rule their own space, and it was the one space where they weren't under the oppressive thumb of men. That this had a little bit of that freedom where they could have friends, where they could relate, where they didn't have daily tasks. They had more freedom in some ways by giving up freedom in other places.
Mhm. That makes sense.
Were children with them?
So, we'll talk about that in a little bit because first of all, we have a first harem. And this is important because there's actually two different houses of women in this story. So the first house of women is not for for long-term living. The first house of women is for a year-long preparation to see the king, where they are going to be perfumed, they are going to be bathed, they are going to be fed. Why take a year to perfume, bathe, and feed these women?
Average women would be pretty malnourished. If they've come just out of childhood, they haven't had a good life so far. I'm just picturing them a bunch of kind of skinny people, and they need a lot of preparation, and they're chorus. I mean, if you're out of a peasant home, you have no manners necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying, okay, I suppose peasants had manners. That's exaggerating,
Manners are
but
different.
yeah, and everything is different.
Right.
Everything. I mean,
Yeah.
And there certainly was probably a great deal of teaching that went on, as well as all the perfuming and so on. After all, you're going to go see the king, and people don't behave around the king like they do around the other people in the village. You know?
Yeah. Clay, I saw you click off mute. Were you going to say something?
Yes, and my screen keeps freezing and I keep coming back in. I was going to ask about that second harem. Um, how long do you get to stay there? I mean, we're talking teenage girls who have now been with the king, so they're in the second harem now. How much of your life do you stay there? What happens as you approach much older age? And it sounds as though you might cover that at another time.
Well, I can answer it now, and we have a few clues to this in a few different places. So, first of all, one of the first context clues we can use is what happened to Vashti. So Vashti has been removed from her post, but her needs are still taken care of. He did not banish her from the courtly process. He just is never inviting her in front of him again. And so, and we see that there is a difference between the harem before the night with the king, and I think you all know what happens with the night with the king. There is certain expectations that a woman would be performing on that night, on her special night with the king, which then makes her his property. Which before it's kind of like he's taking care of her. The implication is there are sexual relations, and then she is moved to a different location because she is now his property. Now, we have covered this before, especially if you think back to King David and what happened when King David was old and they brought in a young girl to keep him warm in bed. Now, it's very clear that they never had relations. But do you remember what happened after King David died and the politics around that girl? What was the drama around it? Do you remember? Gretchen, you're shaking your head.
oh
Yes?
yeah. I mean, she was a powerful person after that. She was number one concubine. I mean, at most recent favored.
Right. And who asked for her?
The king. Oh no, they did. I don't know. We don't know, do we?
No,
And they said David. Do we know?
She was in the middle of drama. That's why I bring her up. So one of David's sons gets promoted to king, and the runner-up asks for the concubine. If you remember, it is the younger brother that gets elevated, and the older brother asks for her.
Oh yeah.
And or this would have been Solomon. So Solomon's promoted to king because if you remember, Bathsheba pulled some strings to get the youngest of the brothers elevated to king. And then Solomon's oldest brother was like, okay, you can be king, but can I have David's most recent concubine?
Yeah.
And what is shown is that the older brother is trying to have political influence by marrying who he thinks is the most recent queen. So taking a piece of the previous king's property is seen as a political move. Therefore, if we take what we learned in that situation and apply it over here, because similar rules apply, what we can infer is that once the king sleeps with someone, they don't get to sleep with anyone else. Because that then could be a political move to unseat the king. So it is in the king's own interest to keep those women in a location because they're his property, no one else's, and if anyone else claims his property, they're in trouble, and they're probably trying to do something. So to answer, that's the roundabout way to say, Clay, once the king sleeps with you, you're there forever. That's your life. Now, granted, still a fairly cushy life. Yeah, Larry?
And you don't get to go back and see the king unless he asked for it.
Correct.
Yeah, that was stated clearly.
So here's the interesting part. Some women may not want to go see the king again. Maybe they just like their fairly cushy life. Because this is, I mean, being a concubine is sex work. Now, granted, you probably have a better life if you see the king regularly because you get favors, you get treats, you probably get a bigger portion of food. This is a little bit of a reality TV show house going on here where they are competing for attention. But if you really just aren't into that and you're just fine having a standard of living, you just may not try.
Yeah.
And the question about children, I do believe in the second house they would be rearing children. I am not positive on that, but that's a different space. But you would also have communal childcare. That's one of the other bonuses. Or once you get to a certain stage, the women would not be the ones being active mothers. They would have other people, wet nurses, tutors, all of that. They would start then going through the courtly process. But it is kind of an interesting thought thinking about having, like, going through just the stages of womanhood, whether it be pregnancy or birth or menopause, in a house full of other women going through similar stages.
In a way, it is sort of like a nunnery, isn't it?
Yeah. So that sets the next plot into motion that we're rounding up all the beautiful young women and we're going to put them in a house of women and we're going to fatten them up. Because here's the other thing, I looked up out of interest because our modern beauty standards are not ancient Persian beauty standards. And a lot of movies, when they depict things like this, depict modern standards of beauty. And so, let's see where, hold on. Let me make sure I get, here we go. This is not from ancient times, but this is, I believe this is from when the caliphate, when Persia was taken over by Muslim conquerors. And so this is more of a Muslim depiction, but you can still start to see some of the differences in ancient beauty standards. It is actually very common in Persian context to find a unibrow beautiful. You have dark hair, kohl around the eyes, which is like sooty ash that they would put. Evidently, it works really well if you don't have sunglasses to kind of prevent some glare going into your eyes. You see that these people are not as dark-skinned. The Persian people do tend to be a little bit lighter in skin, but you can see the ornamentation with which Persians were well known for their love of jewelry, but also their love of henna. And so there'd be a lot of henna tattoos.
Mhm.
And so part of like being in the spa area, like they would be constantly like getting their henna refreshed, getting makeup, oil to make their face be lustrous because they're in a dry climate and everyone has dry, cracked skin. So all of these things, in the same way that today, like it is not feasible for average people to do the beauty routines of Hollywood stars, they're basically making them into the Hollywood stars. Or whoop, they're oh, I thought that had an image of women. That did not.
Are those beauty marks or are they
Henna
is it
dots.
is it just henna dots like the one beside her lips and then the one on her neck is and then it definitely like a tattoo there on her neck, which would be a
Yeah.
painful place.
Yes, this right
Yeah.
here is likely henna.
Okay.
The beauty
Not a
marks,
tattoo.
unknown.
Uh-huh.
People throughout
Oh, here's another one up here.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is why
Oh.
I'm considering that this might be henna. This style of art does seem to have Indian influence just by the shape of the eyes. It looks a lot like Indian art. And so you have something resembling a bindi there. Sometimes people have used various things to cover up blemishes because even the best beauty routines, people have acne. So these may be beauty marks, they may be covering acne, they may just be seen as beautiful.
Wow.
This is another depiction. I pulled this out if only because you can see the chubby bellies. Um, one of the things that is
Wow.
beautiful in this point in time is not the slender figure that we celebrate today. They really were trying to fatten these girls up
Wow.
because wealth meant food, meant sugar, and um, I remember them doing a scan of Tutankhamun's body and some of his problems, and it seemed like he had a real big sweet tooth and may have had diabetes because of it. Um, if you have access to sugar and you're rich, you're probably going to
Yeah.
eat a lot of it.
Now,
But
now, did they have access to sugar?
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
likely through not sugar cane, but dates would be a common way to process sugar.
Okay.
But remember, Persia is actually fairly tropical, so they may also have sugar cane.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, they had ways to make sugar. They would have ways to make things sweet. Um, and so we have the long flowing hair that is styled. We have these ornate robes. I was trying to look up a few things. Evidently, pre-Islamic Persia didn't have as much differentiation in their clothing as would happen afterwards. So there's not like the veiling that we would see. This is a very different culture. But we see pieces of it still here.
Mhm.
So, anyways, very different beauty standards than we have today. So next we meet one of our main characters, a gentleman named Mordecai. So what have we learned about Mordecai?
Okay, till he isn't.
Well, he took he took Esther in when her parents died.
Yes. Mhm.
Adopted her in a sense.
Yep. And what is their relationship between Mordecai? Like, yes, he's an adopted father, but what is their other family relation?
Isn't he an uncle?
Yeah,
So this is the one where I am confused.
yeah. Who's the uncle?
I
Oh,
always thought
okay.
Mordecai was her uncle, and the my translation saying it's her cousin,
Hmm.
Oh,
and that Mordecai's uncle is her father. I don't know if this is a translation issue or what, because traditionally I've heard him referred to as her uncle. Anyways, he seems to
Oh,
be
yeah, it
an
says that.
older relation, but a fairly close one still.
Mhm.
Well,
Oh,
it,
yeah, yeah, it says here.
it
He
says,
had Hadassah, he had brought his cousin, for she
Right.
had neither father nor mother.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. A Mordecai adopted her. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So it's not it's not Uncle Mordecai. It's just cousin Mordecai. Hmm.
yeah, Esther or Esther's father is Abihail, and Abihail is the uncle of Mordecai.
Yes.
And Mordecai adopted Esther after her parents died.
There
Now,
does seem to be an age gap between them. That is kind of
Yeah.
implied.
does that seem interesting to you that it's the house of David kind of, or it's the house of Saul, Kish, son of Kish, a Benjamite? I don't know.
So that is a very keen observation. I was gonna go there, but Gretchen, you brought us there. Thank you. We have Mordecai's relations. So one other note, when it says son of, it can mean descendant of. It's a way to say lineage.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
So we're
Hmm.
not going back like 3 generations. This is saying
Okay.
he is a descendant of this line and this line and this line.
Okay.
And we get a connection to the exile. So we see that, yes, he is from a group of people who was exiled with a particular king, which implies that he is of nobility. This is a
Hmm.
family that had connections to the king. He is a Benjaminite and has connections to the first king of Israel, King Saul.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a doubly noble family. So this is not just your farm laborer who got exiled. And this will become important because what do you expect of someone who is from a noble family with connections to royalty? What kind of things would they know or not know?
Would they know what is expected in court?
Somewhat. They probably had more refined manners, yes.
Yeah, better manners.
Mm-hmm. Are there skills that would be likely passed down if you were in the court? What skills would a courtier have that would be helpful for you to teach your continued children about?
Well, how to follow the rules of the court.
Could you
Mhm.
read? Could you read?
That is the likelihood, is that this is a literate family.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
And that will come into play. This is where there is implications being put in the text that we probably don't pick up. This is a literate family
Hmm.
who has taught their children to continually read.
Mhm.
But you also have the manners, because I will say I come from a family that has very traditional manners, that it doesn't matter that I grew up in a suburb where no one knew my family. My family still taught me how to use the fancy forks and knives on either side of the plate.
Mhm.
And sometimes knowledge like that is passed on, even if it is not being actively used. So Esther probably has a little bit more refinement than her peers.
Mhm.
Hmm.
The other thing to note, we have also 2 names for Esther. This brings up another thing that will come into play, is that Esther is a Persian name. Hadassah is a Hebrew name.
Brunei. Yeah.
A lot of people in the exile have 2 names. We see this is still today, that many people, as an attempt to assimilate, you have your traditional family name, but you go by something else.
Mhm.
Mordecai um, is a more Jewish sounding name. So Mordecai's not trying to blend in, but Esther is. And so this whole book is named after her Persian name, not her Hebrew name, which translates to myrtle. She's Myrtle.
The Book of Myrtle.
Yeah, that's
Right.
So we know about Mordecai and his lineage, and we've made implications by that. What do we know about Esther other than the fact that she's an orphan? I'll give you a hint. She's given one trait and one trait alone.
Well, she's beautiful.
Exactly, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yay, me.
okay.
She's very pretty. And so of course she gets picked up when they come around getting all the women.
Fair and beautiful.
Isn't she Jewish?
She is Jewish. Okay,
Jewish,
yeah. So
yeah.
she is Jewish, but undercover because she's not going by her Jewish name and she's pretty.
Okay. Yeah.
And so she is taken to the citadel in Susa under the custody of Hegia, and Hegia, one of the eunuchs. And I actually looked up a little bit about eunuchs because in this time period I wanted to know a little bit more of like the context and what exactly was implied, because that term fluctuates in meaning. And I'll just read this from one article that I found on Iraniaca online. Anyways, it's talking about ancient eunuchs. It says, as a part of the tribute, Babylonians annually sent 500 boys to the court of the Persian king to be made into eunuchs, at least by Herodotus's estimation. Herodotus also not known to be accurate with numbers. 5 boys were sent every 3rd year by the Ethiopians, and 100 boys were sent every 5 years by Concleans, and their neighbors were probably made eunuchs, also citing Herodotus. And it was noted that the Persians preferred the prettiest boys you can find. So they are looking for pretty young boys, and the eunuchs are likely from other territories. They're not castrating their own boys, but these are very much castrated men or castrated boys grown into men, and they are said to be pretty. The thing is, by doing this, by choosing pretty people and by castrating them, the implication is actually, I've read this from other sources, they are in some ways creating a third gender. We have often the binary between men and women. They are intentionally choosing people to kind of create this third category, which is just very different from how we think about it today. These are not emasculated men. These are not feminized men. This is a category unto itself. They are said, because this is done in childhood, they never grow beards, their voice never drops. They are a different category. Yeah, Larry.
And I think the fact when they say they want the boys to be pretty to start with means they want them to be more effeminate, because what they're trying to do is to push them towards femininity more by castrating them, so they don't want the bodybuilding boys, or the big hulks. They want the more effete, those interested in music and fine things, not war and fighting.
So this brings up, thank you for that differentiation, because the other thing that is then interesting is that, yes, eunuchs protect the women, but these aren't like hulky bodyguards in front of them.
No.
These are, I think if we were to create an imagination today around this, the closest category we have are effeminate gay men teaching women how to be pretty. That there's a sense where, like, if you want refinement, you don't send in a lumberjack to teach a woman how to be refined. You
No.
need someone who is already
Ready.
refined and knows the finer things in life
Yes. Yes.
to teach the women how to behave, the manners, how to do their hair well, all of these things. They are not hulky protector guards. That's not who they're bringing in. The other thing is that eunuchs were powerful. Like, yes, it is kind of horrific that this was done without the boys' consent, but once again, kind of like the women being scooped up and put into a house of luxury, eunuchs were like some of the most trusted advisors of the king. There's a few stories of eunuchs becoming kingmakers, essentially, where they decided who was next on the throne. And we see here, Esther chose wisely and befriended one of them, and he quickly makes sure that she has everything she needs. So what do we learn about Esther, about when she's making friends with the eunuch, and the eunuch's now, oh yeah, you're getting your food, don't worry, I'll get you your maids, don't worry.
She's smart. She knows how to get her way.
She might be pretty, but she's also strategic.
Strategic, yes.
Yeah.
Would Mordecai have probably told her that this is what you need to do? You need to get this guy on your side. I mean, would that have been another advantage of being raised with people who knew what was going on in court?
Like that.
So here is an interesting dynamic in the story. At the end of that chunk, we see that, or we have the verses starting in 10. Esther did not reveal her people or her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to tell. So Mordecai is coaching her. He does seem to understand. He seems to be a low-level official in the Persian court, so he kind of knows a little bit. He's kind of from the courtly family, and he's like, don't tell anyone, which also means there's probably some underlying anti-Semitism going around, that it is like, while the Jewish people can rise up in ranks, it's kind of not a good idea to tell people you're Jewish. But what does it imply if Esther has to be told this by Mordecai? How does that compare to Queen Vashti? Because these two are going to be put into contrast a lot. How is Esther different than Vashti?
Well, Esther certainly does have a figure who is looking out for her. I mean, this thing of him walking in front of the harem, walking back and forth in front of the harem to learn how she was doing and how she fared. I don't know that Vashti, she probably had a favorite eunuch that helped her out, but this is somebody who's on her side.
So she has someone, yes, looking out for her, but it's notably an older male figure, which implies she's still under the authority of men, and she listens to the authority of men, where Vashti said, no, I don't want to go in front of the men.
Yeah.
Esther is compliant.
Yeah.
So there's a bit, this is where feminist commentators have like observed that, like, okay, Esther is this really cool character, but some of her chutzpah is taken away from her because she's obeying orders. She's doing what the men tell her to do. She's really good at following rules. She does some courageous things, but it's because the men tell her to do so.
Well,
how else would you do it in a Bible?
Right. I mean, I'm just saying we are seeing cultural expectations.
Yeah.
Like it is a different culture. It's just good to observe. Like, she has someone in her court, yeah, or like on her side helping her out from the outside, but also she is expected to do exactly what Mordecai says.
Yeah. And if Mordecai simply tells her, look, the last queen disobeyed the king and she's no longer here, you better obey the king.
Mm-hmm.
So her choice is between a rock and a hard place, She doesn't have much choice.
Yeah. Gary, did I see a hand with you?
Yeah, I thought that it might be more that Mordecai was telling her that I have not and will not uh, reveal your background, and so you should not, you should do the same. Keep it up. I mean, it's not necessarily giving her a command. It's just to pull this thing off,
Oh,
even though I have never revealed to the powers of be your background, and you should not either.
The implication is still that Mordecai knows better and has more knowledge, and that she can't figure this out herself. That there's a little bit where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why there is an age differential, and there probably is some coaching that is needed. Like I said, she's probably a teenager. But it kind of demotes her intelligence to say that she needed to be told to keep her identity a secret versus kind of just being able to tell herself after a life living with a Persian name instead of her Jewish name. So there's a part where she does seem really smart, but also sometimes her intelligence is a little bit undercut. It can be both, and we can read this many ways. I just wanted to point it out. But Mordecai's going to give her lots of instructions. Don't worry. He is not going to shut up.
When two people have a secret, that they need to be coordinated in their position. So,
Yeah. But notably, one of the other details we're finding, Mordecai cannot go to where Esther is. He has to stand by the gate to figure out what's going on. And if Esther is to talk to him, she has to go to the gate. And so this becomes a dynamic. They are kept now in very separate realms, and to communicate is a little bit difficult.
So is Mordecai doing this because he's got an ultimate plot for some kind, like he wants her to infiltrate something? I'm not sure what is he just trying to protect her, or is he hoping to establish something for himself or his people?
So I know where the story goes, so I am not going to answer that question.
Okay.
I want you all to answer the question. What would Mordecai's motivation be here?
Yeah.
Why would Mordecai want to protect Esther and make sure she climbs the ranks?
Yeah. He's either got her best interests at heart or his best interests at heart.
So we know how it would benefit Esther to be at the top of the pile of the group of ladies. Like that one I think is fairly evident. Why would it be in Mordecai's best interest for Esther to do well?
Well,
Because then he gets
Well, is he Jewish also? She's Jewish.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's a protective.
of the culture, kind of, you're saying.
Well, and even just there being Jewish, Jews get killed.
Mhm. So yes, having someone to advocate for you and your people, why would it matter that a queen would be able, or why like at this point she is just a sexual partner at first. Why still do this? She's a woman in a patriarchal culture. What influence could she have?
well, she should be pretty close to the king. You know, you can't, if you can't get number one, you know, I mean, Mordecai isn't going to appoint a new king, but if he can get a queen, he can certainly have some influence at court.
Okay.
So yeah, this is a time where it's like, okay, we have a shot to maybe a little bit get the king's ear. Maybe just a little bit, maybe just one night every few years, because evidently there's a lot of women cycling through this. It actually says that because the king is going to take one girl like there's a time frame, they calculated it, and it takes 4 years to find the new queen. So this is not a long process. This is a very slow process.
Well, Mordecai does get a chance to get the king's ear.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
So what happens with Mordecai?
When these two eunuchs are angry. And he gives them the tip off. They want to kill the king. And I wondered, why do they want to kill the king? Why would it doesn't let us know what made two eunuchs angry enough? And they're guarding the bedroom. So what makes them, I just kind of wondered, why would they get angry enough to want to do that? But it gives Mordecai a chance to tip off the king and elevate his position.
So to back up a few steps, Esther goes to the king for her one night, and it goes well. And just immediately the king doesn't ask any questions. He's like, okay, Esther, you're my gal, puts a crown on her head. They have a banquet. The implication is that banquet is a wedding banquet. So this isn't just like, hey, I found my favorite concubine. This is now the crown is on her head. She's being elevated above all of the other women. So she is now Queen Esther. And there's a whole holiday. She gets the whole works. But then we see that Mordecai is still by the gate, like paying attention, watching out for her. He hears this intrigue. He tells Esther. Esther is able to go to the king in the name of Mordecai. So she's not just like, hey, hubby, I found this out. She's like, Mordecai found this out. And the two men the word either means they were hanged or put on spikes. We don't know.
Paled.
What doesn't happen? Because that's where the story ends. Did you notice what doesn't happen?
Well, no other perpetrators are sought out, or no other intrigue is investigated. They just kill the two that they, were talking to one another.
Yep. So no further investigation needed.
Yeah.
What happens with Mordecai?
He ought to get a little reward now.
He should. Does he?
I don't know.
According to chapter 3, someone else gets promoted. I think we have to go into chapter 3 to find out what
Right.
So this is where we start to get drama and intrigue. And I just want to point this out because this is going to come back around in like 3 more chapters. Mordecai never gets rewarded for saving the king's life. So Mordecai did something pretty solid for the king. He found out a treasonous plot. Esther was able to put a good word in for him, and then nothing happens. Or
that kind of explains why I did read ahead a little bit, and I was thinking, well, if Mordecai's done all that stuff to get Esther in there in good favor, then why is he so obvious about, I'm Jewish and I'm not going to bow down to this king? So is it partly that his pride is hurt or something.
We will save that for next week.
Okay, okay.
But it is a good connection to be made. So yes, while Esther, it is noted, while Esther is hiding who she is, the other implication, because there's a note where she's eating what they serve her, which means she's not observing kosher laws.
Oh, right.
There is a lot where she's not following Torah. It's fairly implied that she's not.
Okay.
Unless you have the expanded version. The expanded version makes her a much better Jewish woman, but at this point in this version of the story, she's not following any of those rules. But Mordecai has a different place in life. He's able to be a little bit more open about his identity. So
Well, and mine says something about Haman and Mordecai would have hated each other anyway because of their tribes or whatever,
yeah.
their backgrounds.
So yes, next week we are going to meet the villain of the story. So right now, this is all just setting things up. Like we very quickly put Esther on the throne. There's not a lot of drama and intrigue that gets her there. She kind of just goes through the beauty ritual, appears in front of the king, and the king says, "Okay, yes, that one." So we're getting close to the end of time. Any other reflections for our story today? Yeah, Gretchen?
Well, it kind of all goes contrary to that thing about God looks upon the heart, not upon the physique of the person. And in this case, it's not God involved in this, but it's still that interplay between, is it heart, is it goodness, is it?
Well, yeah, because men have only one thing on their mind.
Yeah, right.
God may look at the heart, but the king's looking at the face.
Yes. Or something like that, yes.
Yeah. Good point.
It's a great story, though, and you're really helping make it
Oh my gosh, yes.
better. So
I did not infer any of that background on my own, so I'm so thankful.
Gary, did you have a comment there?
Well, I had one thing that personally had me scratching my head.
Okay.
Verse 19, after this big celebration, when he chose Esther and made her the queen, they had the big parties. Then they gathered the virgins for a second time.
right.
And I just thought, oh, here we go again. He still wasn't satisfied. And I admit, I haven't read ahead. Joanne cheated and read ahead, and I don't want to talk about it.
But I think, Gary, that's kind of an interesting point, because what is the point of that first part of 19? When the virgins were being gathered together, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. It's just a very interesting image. You have, on one hand, you have all these young women having their chick gathering, and then you have Mordecai out there going to the gate to do manly work.
So a little bit of explanation. I see your hand, Larry. I think this might clear it up. Hebrew is not as linear in its language or in its thought pattern as English is. So, it's one of those, I think I've explained this before, like Hebrew does not have a present and a past and a future tense. Its tenses do not move in time. What changes a Hebrew verb is who does the action. That's how you conjugate verbs. How I did something versus Larry did something versus you did something versus God did something. That's how you translate Hebrew verbs. Time is implied, which makes some things very messy. When you learn Hebrew and Greek, people tend to like one or the other, because Greek writing is like solving a math problem, where it's like this ending changes the word in this way, and the syntax is very strict, and you have all these things, and it felt to me like a math problem. I hated Greek. Hebrew, when you ask, how do you know this means something, like this conjugation means this, and the professor will say, context. It is willy-nilly all over the place. It is a chaotic language that is more like an impressionist painting.
Wow.
So it's one of those, that is one of the reasons why it's hard to take Hebrew and slam it into English, is because English is very linear. We very much like to know the time, and we have a very strict order of words, and that's just, Hebrew doesn't like that. I explain that to say, this little section is not chronological.
Yeah, right.
This is a pause, and like if you think about reading, this is one where I disagree with where the chapter markers are. I could see someone reading the story, and you would get to this part and it's like, okay, time to go to bed, and then the next day you pick the story back up and it's like, oh yeah, remember last night when the virgins were being gathered together? It's a recall to what already happened. When the virgins were being gathered, Mordecai was sitting at the gate.
Oh, that makes sense.
Sitting at the gate, the implication is that the gates are closed. That's not the gates are not necessarily closed. Why we know Mordecai is a low-level official is because the city gates, or the king's gates, are where business happened. So he is someone like some kind of official that would stand at the king's gate and deal with people. This is not him eavesdropping alone at the edge of Buckingham Palace's gate. This is a place of business, of commerce, of law, of litigation. People lived on the street, and so his job would be to go to the city gates and stand there and help and do whatever he's supposed to do. We don't know what his job is, but he's eavesdropping while working.
All right.
So those are two pieces of context there that I think help out. That's a time jump back in time, but it's also, he's not being creepy, because it, like, to our modern idea, it sounds like he's being creepy and kind of just like eavesdropping. This is a busy public place. But thank you for bringing that up, Gary. I'm happy to have smoothed that out, because yeah, it seems weird to have a second batch of like after Esther is crowned queen and then gather up more young ladies. That would be a little bit absurd.
And it's interesting in that place that matter came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther the first time that she's dressed as her title.
Yeah. So when she's finally given the elevated rank, that's when he's able to communicate this plot to the king. So there's still implied time jumps. Time jumps in Hebrew are always implied. It is, like I said, this language is all over the place sometimes. Gretchen, did you have a favorite when learning the Hebrew?
Yeah, Greek. Greek. I was just thinking that. I thought, oh, no. I can figure that out.
See, most people like one or the other. They're very different languages. Anyways, well, folks, we'll save the rest of the drama and intrigue for next time. Clay, did you have something?
No, but if you could stay on after for a minute.
Cool, can do.
I have a question.
All right, let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we give you thanks today for this story that is interesting to see, another world with different culture and different implications and different expectations, and yet we see that you are still in the story, in between the words, guiding things. And so today we ask that even today, where you don't always speak to us in burning bushes or from the clouds, that we know you're in between all the moments of our life. Help guide us, Help give us wisdom and counsel. Help us be able to advocate for the people who need to be advocated for and to take advantage of the places we are put. So I ask that you be with this group until we're able to gather again together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. It's good to see all of you. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Yes, you